It's a great day. We've got fabulous weather. We get to celebrate Earth Day when the Earth is actually being nice to us. It's not too roasting hot out here. So how many people, let me just see a show of hands. How many people were here in June of 1990 when they had the all-night hearing down at City Council meeting? Just a show of hands. Okay, so not a huge number. How many people were here in August of 1992 when we passed the SOS ordinance? Let me see a show of hands for that. A few more people. So I'll give you kind of a brief little history lesson, tell you a little bit more about it, because it's really a fabulous story. And can you all hear me back there? Can you guys raise your hands if you can hear me back there, okay? Okay, great, thank you. In June of 1990, there was a city council meeting that went all night long. A company called Barton Creek Properties that was owned by Freeport-McMoRan, which still operates, I think, the world's largest gold mine in Irian Jaya, which is the other half of the island of Papua New Guinea, was requesting a number of variances to what was then a very weak comprehensive watersheds ordinance to build a small city in the watershed for Barton Creek above Barton Springs. And the citizens got wind of it and said, no, this is bad. This will pollute Barton Springs and Barton Creek. And when they had the council hearing down at the old council chambers, literally thousands of people showed up. I was one of many thousands. There were so many people, it blocked the street at 2nd Street. The cars couldn't get through. Police had to redirect traffic around it. There were so many people, they filled up the council chambers and the downstairs and Liberty Lunch. If anybody still remembers Liberty Lunch, it was packed full of people. And actually, the head of Barton Creek Properties, Jim Bob Moffett, anybody know that name? Jim Bob Moffett? Yep. They had actually paid people to sit in the council chambers with little buttons that said yes to Barton Creek Properties or something like that. And I've since talked to some of those people, and they said, yeah, they were paid to sit there, but no way did they sign up to sit there for that long. And so they left after the hearing went on for a while. But they were among the people who, when Jim Bob Moffett said that he had played football for UT, and in fact, he was one of the smartest people. He had some of the highest grades of anybody at UT. And he paused, and then he said, on the football team, the people that he had paid to sit in those seats practically fell on the floor laughing at him. So that did not get things off to a good start. But literally, there were so many thousands of people who had signed up to speak and who had crammed into the council chambers that after a while, Mayor Lee Cook, who had been trying to call people to come to the microphone, and it was taking 5 minutes or more for people to snake their way through the crowds, he finally just said, line up. I'm not even gonna call your name, just everybody line up at each microphone and we'll take testimony. Keep it to 3 minutes, please. Let's get started. And I spoke about 12:30 in the morning, but I remember many of the comments. George Dolis said, you know, it's no wonder that there's fecal coliform in Barton Creek, because they were in fact documenting increased levels of pollution in Barton Creek. That was one of the concerns people had. We were already seeing pollution in Barton Creek, and if we permitted a huge new development in the watershed for Barton Springs and along Barton Creek, it would just make the water more polluted. And George Dolis said, well, it's no wonder that we're seeing elevated levels of fecal matter in the creek. All this development is scaring the feces out of the species. There were so many great lines from that hearing, and in fact, people watched it on the public access TV channel all through the night. And I heard for quite a long time afterwards, every time they reran the footage of the all-night hearing, it got some of the highest viewership levels that Access TV for the city of Austin had ever recorded. So it was a huge event, and it really galvanized the community. And at the end of the all-night hearing, it literally went until 6 in the morning. At the end, the council that had previously been projected to vote in favor of the Barton Creek Properties request for all those variances voted against it. And it was a huge victory for the citizens. And people felt like they really could make a difference. That if they showed up and if they spoke out, they really could change the course of history. And I love that Margaret Mead quote. I butcher it all the time, where she said, "Never underestimate the power of a small group of committed and determined citizens to change the course of the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." And we showed that night at the council hearing in June of 1990. And the next year, actually over the course of the next year, a number of us from various environmental organizations. At the time, I was the state program director for Texas Clean Water Action. And we met the leaders of the Sierra Club, of the Audubon Society, of Clean Water Action, of We Care Austin, of a number of different environmental organizations. And we decided that we would try and get the council to pass a stronger ordinance, but if we couldn't, if they weren't willing to do that, then we would have to take it into our own hands. And so we would have to use the power under the city charter that's still there today that allows citizens to initiate a law. And if they get enough ballot signatures, they can put it on the ballot and let the entire city vote for it. And that's what we ended up doing. We tried to get the council to pass a strong enough law, and they weren't willing to. It was what was then referred to as the Rule Council, which was Reynolds, Erde, Larson, and Epstein. If you ever hear people refer to the Rule Council, that's what they were talking about. Now there's a movie that was released a few years back called Unforeseen. Has anybody seen that? Anybody seen that movie? The filmmaker, Laura Dunn, did a very good job telling the story from the developer's point of view. And I said at the time that hearing the SOS story from the developer's point of view was a little like hearing the story of the civil rights movement from George Wallace's point of view. It was a little slanted, but it was still an interesting perspective. But I think there's such a great story about what the citizens accomplished, both with that all-night hearing and with the passage of SOS, that I try and tell the story whenever I can. So this group of small but determined citizens knitted together out of thin air the Save Our Springs Alliance, the SOS Alliance. And believe it or not, we had a lot of debate over what to call it. Some people suggested an organization with a really long name that nobody would remember, and somebody had the sense to suggest SOS, which is what we settled on. And we built an organization through the environmental organizations in town, and then through citizen groups. We had house parties in neighborhoods all across the city. And we had, I tell people, I came to understand what the French resistance might have been like because of what was happening in Austin at the time. You had, in many cases, people who were the owners of companies who supported the effort to try and kill SOS at the ballot. And then you had a lot of their employees under them who supported SOS. And so we would get phone calls from people. I remember one day, somebody called me and he said, "I'm on my coffee break at the print shop and I can't talk for long, but they've ordered 40,000 copies of a 4-color flyer and here's what it says." And another time somebody walked into the office and he said, "You know, we've never met, you don't know me, I don't know you, but I found this on the copy machine at my law office and I thought you'd like to see it." And it was the plan for the other side, how they were going to raise money, who they were going to raise it from, what they were going to do. And we got this all the time. People would send fax